Stay tuned for Captain Tracy Beegen of the Living Beyond Pain podcast, produced by the Defense Health Agency.
Welcome back to the Living Beyond Pain podcast. Today, I'm very excited to bring back a special guest, Dr. Riedmiller, and we're going to be talking about how do we cope with our pain flare-ups. And we're going to be discussing the C.A.P.E method. Welcome, Dr. Riedmiller.
Thank you. It's good to be with you again.
So, Dr. Riedmiller, can you tell us about the C.A.P.E method that's utilized in the Living Beyond Pain group?
Sure. So, the C.A.P.E is actually an acronym, C.A.P.E. And the C in the C.A.P.E is where we consider our ways of coping. The A is where we anticipate and avoid obstacles. P is where we prepare for triggers. And E is engaging in positive coping. So that comes up to C.A.P.E, which one way to help ourselves remind that is the acronym C.A.P.E. I will just start by saying that flare-ups are actually, in chronic pain, we expect them. We do think that they will happen. No matter how efficient we become at managing our lives through our emotions and through our behaviors and through our thoughts, it's still very much likely that we're going to have flare-ups. You know, the weather may change, which would cause a flare-up, or we may find ourselves engaged in a particularly stressful event that could cause a flare-up. So probably the first thing to understand about flare-ups is that they do happen, and that it's wise for us to be prepared for them and to think about what conditions in our life might cause us to have a flare-up.
Now, in the group Living Beyond Pain, we talk about using the C.A.P.E method. Can you tell us a little bit about what C.A.P.E stands for?
C.A.P.E. The C is consider your ways of coping, and that is essentially reviewing what are my options. What are the things that I have found to be beneficial in the past, or what are the things that I'm learning currently in regards to coping with a flare-up?
Those methods of coping could look different for every person. Someone might feel that relaxation is a great way for them to manage their flare-ups, and they'll put on some meditation or do some deep breathing, some relaxation exercises. And someone else might, like you were talking about earlier, is breaking out their thought log and writing down what are my automatic thoughts right now? Can I distract myself with a puzzle or listening to calming music? Or maybe I need to go and move my body, or maybe I need to shift positions, and maybe there's a coping card they can use to remind them of positive things and things that bring them joy.
Right, absolutely. So as with many things in life, pain is truly an individual experience, and we do vary from one another in regards to the intensity of the pain we feel and how we feel pain, and how we can cope with pain, including flare-ups, varies from person to person as well. So one of my favorite things to do with people is to encourage them to think about and actually talk out loud or write down what's helped in the past with a flare-up. What have I done that's been particularly helpful? It can even be helpful, frankly, to write a couple of those things down on a flashcard and carry it so that it's available if we happen to go through a flare-up, and we can look at the flashcard and see. So that's one way to do that. Another way to take a look at what ways can I cope with a flare-up would be to think about, what am I learning in this class, for example?
Great. And now the A. What does the A in the C.A.P.E acronym stand for?
So the A stands for anticipating and avoiding obstacles, and that is essentially what we're doing when we're anticipating and avoiding obstacles is we're sitting down and thinking about, what obstacles might I come across today? Or let's say we're preparing to do something that we don't often do, maybe travel a long distance in a car, or maybe get on an airplane, or something like that, and thinking about, okay, I have this travel planned. What are some potential obstacles that are going to occur in regards to this travel? So being able to anticipate those obstacles allows us to potentially avoid them, or it could allow us to prepare for them should they occur.
And one of the strategies for the anticipate and avoiding, in another one of our segments, we're talking about pacing. And so that sounds like a great place to put in pacing if you know you have a trip coming up, or when you're having those good days versus those flare-ups, managing the good days in a way that's not going to contribute to flaring up and trying to push through and get everything done you didn't get done. And so planning that out and pacing is a great strategy to also implement there.
Yeah, I agree with you about that. I think that pacing is one of the skills that is available to learn in this program that can provide tremendous relief to people. And I like to refer to it as the 2-point rule. I find that my patients and myself remember it a bit better with that. So essentially what we do with pacing is we think about what is our common pain level, or what pain level am I at currently. And then as we engage in any kind of activity, we kind of casually observe that pain level. And at the point at which it gets to 2 points over our baseline or common pain level, we want to stop the activity and take a break. And take that break from the activity until we're back down to our baseline. When we're back down to our baseline, if we happen to have more that we want to do in regards to the activity, we can re-engage, and we'll do it until we're 2 points above our baseline, and then we take a break again, and until we're finished with the activity. And the real nice thing, I think, about using pacing is it allows us to engage in activity such that we avoid the very high pain experience and also the recovery period from that pain experience. So, for example, if I apply pacing today to my activity, it's much more likely I'm going to be able to engage in activity again tomorrow, as opposed to just white-knuckling it and pushing through my pain today, and then tomorrow not being able to do anything. And quite frankly, it won't just be tomorrow. It'll be 2-3 days, if not a week.
So the 2-point rule, I just want to make sure I'm explaining this accurately for our listeners, and it's really a helpful reminder for me as well. So usually we use a pain scale of 0, no pain at all, 10, worst pain you've experienced. And so if my baseline is, we'll say a 3, and that's where I operate at, and I'm going up to a 5, that's when I would stop and take a break. Is that correct?
That's correct. So you would start the activity and note that your pain level was a 3. That's your baseline pain level. And as I said, you just kind of casually observe your pain level. And when you notice that it gets to a 5, because that's 2 points over your 3, that's where you want to take a break. And then you'll take a break until your pain scale score comes down 2 points from the 5 to the 3, which is your baseline, and then you would continue the activity if you wanted to at that point. And again, you'd wait until you went up 2 points. So in your case, we'd be going from a 3 to a 5, and we'd take another break, and we would continue to approach it that way.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that strategy. And I know it's been really helpful for a number of my patients. So I would really encourage our listeners out there, that's something you've been really struggling with, or something that's really impacting that crash and burn cycle where you have, a good day. And like you said, if you white knuckle it and push through, that's when we're seeing patients and individuals kind of crash for the next couple days. And I've had a number of patients say, I'm just flat on my back and I can't get out of bed because I pushed so hard on the day I was feeling good.
Yeah, I'll share with you that I just today had a patient tell me happily that he completed painting his house. And he used the 2-point rule in doing that. And he kind of chuckled and said, it took me 5 months, but my house is painted. And then he paused and said, if I hadn't done it that way, it wouldn't be painted now. So it was actually quite nice to see how happy he was that he was able to accomplish this desired goal by using the pacing, the 2-point rule skill in his life.
And, that's a really great point, especially for our veterans and active duty. We're very much given the message of push through, drive on, suck it up. and to keep going. So this really does require a change in our thinking and our perception about even our own abilities. There's kind of this, I should be able to do this kind of work. I used to be able to do it this way or this quickly or work for this long. And so there is a level of frustration that most of my patients experience because there's also a loss of identity that's associated with having chronic pain versus the service member and military member they used to be. And that can be really challenging for folks. But here you're sharing a success story where your patient might not have been able to do it as quickly as they would have before, but they were still able to engage in it and still able to do the painting themselves, even though it's not quite what it would have looked like prior to their chronic pain condition.
Yeah, I think that what you touch on there is very, very true for my patients as well. I find that many of my patients struggle with the idea that they're just simply, their body will not allow them to do what their will or their brain would, their desire would like them to do. I find that talking with patients about looking at these different life activities as missions can be very helpful in thinking about what supplies do I have for the mission? How well am I prepared for the mission? The fact is, when we have chronic pain, that we have to be aware that our supplies or our preparation is affected by the limitations that pain puts on us. So our approach to the mission may be different, but the outcome remains the same. We will be successful. And if we do it this way, it's much, much less likely that we're going to experience those extreme pain days and then be laid up, and we have no hope of achieving the mission if we're laid up.
And that brings us to preparing for our triggers. And that's a great way to explain how we prepare for those, is really kind of taking stock of what our resources are and what some of our limitations are in our physical bodies because of our chronic pain.
Yes, that is the P, the preparing for triggers. And again, that's, a lot of what we learn in this program is to slow this process down, this living with pain process down, so that we can understand it well. Like most things, when we understand it well, we're much more able to impact it so that it's less of a problem. So when we understand what our triggers are for flare-ups and we prepare for those triggers, it's kind of like, packing our backpack. We're ready for it. If we need to deal with it, we have what we need to deal with it.
And now for the E in the CAPE acronym. What does the E stand for?
So the E stands for engaging in positive coping. And there are a number of different ways to do this. We might do things like purposefully and intentionally noticing things in our life that we are pleased with, or that we like, or that we're thankful for, grateful for. It might be also noticing when we're talking to people, how we're talking, and trying to use words that are more positive in nature, if you will, not denying the chronic pain experience. We don't want to do that, but we do want to focus on what's positive. So, for example, again, this fellow I spoke about who was able to paint his house, he wasn't focused on how long it took him to paint his house. He was focused on the fact that he did and that he achieved what he wanted to do.
So really, again, it's that being intentional about what we're thinking about, being aware of what we're thinking about can really have a significant impact on how we're experiencing our pain.
Yeah, one of the ways that helps me to think about this is I kind of recall what it was like to be in high school and college and working on algebra, and how hard it was for me to solve algebra problems, and how much easier it was for me to solve simple addition problems. The way that you get to that is that you learn about the problem. In learning about our chronic pain, we turn this situation that's very difficult for us to come up with a resolution to or a solution to into an easier equation for us to solve. Now, it doesn't take our pain away, but it certainly gives us an ability to act so that we are more in control of what happens as opposed to the pain being in control.
And that really is the focus of this podcast, is giving people back more control over their lives so that they can have decreased flare-ups, decreased intensity, and really increasing the ability to engage in those enjoyable activities, getting control back of their lives. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on our podcast, Dr. Riedmiller.
It's been my pleasure.
Well, thank you so much to our listeners, and we hope you'll join us again. Until next time, be well. The Living Beyond Pain podcast is produced by the Defense Health Agency.